Hey y'all. Happy what's Tuesday? Yeah, Tuesday. I know we used to do these on Wednesday, so I get confused. So I'm Dr. Roney. Welcome. If you've been on before, welcome back as always. If you're new to the cancer conversation, I want to take the opportunity to welcome you. Tonight is going to be on the thyroid. So big topic. We're seeing probably what I would call an epidemic rise in thyroid cases. Gosh, even over the last 5 to 10 years, but it just seems like it's even more and more that our patients that are coming in, I would say a large majority have thyroid issues, and the contribution to chronic disease is really, really high as far as having a thyroid that malfunctions and leading to chronic disease is high. So we want to cover that. We want to go over, the mechanism and the physiology of thyroid dysfunction, what causes it. And then Dr. Keneally is going to come on and talk about voltage. So, and really voltage is energy. So she wants to talk about how when your voltage or energy is low in the body, what that does to your cells, and then how that creates chronic disease like cancer, autoimmune disease, things like that. So we're going to hit it pretty well. And I think by the time we're done tonight, you have a really good understanding of thyroid malfunction, what kind of symptoms are involved, what it does to the body at the cellular level, and then also what we could do to help it for sure. But then the voltage part of it, Dr. Keneally really wanted to get into, and the energy part at the cellular level. So without further ado, let me pull up the screen here. So thyroid, let's talk about some generals, and then we'll get into specifics. So I'll give you the 30,000-foot view, and then we'll get into specifics. So thyroid gland sits right here. If you have your Adam's apple here, you have lobes of the thyroid on the right and left that sit right about here. Okay. That thyroid is responsible. It's like your metabolic engine, right? So it's responsible at the cellular level for mitochondrial health, or your powerhouse of the cell. So if you've ever lately anyway done research on disease and chronic disease, mitochondrial health is the key to this whole process. So if the thyroid is malfunctioning, your mitochondria, which is the powerhouse of your cell, is going to be affected. Okay. And they'll use the term a mitochondrial defect. A mitochondrial defect is not primary, it's secondary. And one of the main reasons that you could have a mitochondrial defect is because the thyroid is not functioning well. Okay. So it's your metabolic engine, and it really controls heavily the mitochondria of the cell, or supports the mitochondria of the cell. That's where it becomes really, really important. So again, give you some big picture. There's a good picture of it. Sorry about that. So you see the lobes right and left. You have your cricoid cartilage right here, Adam's apple, and then you have your thyroid on each side. So controls the metabolism of every cell in the body. So there is a thyroid receptor site on every cell of the human body. That's how important it is. Okay. So gland malfunctions or something causes it to have altered function. The symptoms you will get are going to be things like, if it's low, you're going to have potentially cold hands and feet. You could have weight gain. You could be sluggish. You could have depression. You could have outer thirds of the eyebrows. You could start losing those. So there's a lot of different symptoms, which I'll go over in a second, even more, that you could have with low versus high. And I'll go over those so you can see. So it sets the body speed limit. We'll talk about the voltage a little later. When you're cold, it steps on the gas to produce more heat. If you get sick, it revs up the immune system. If you're too stressed by long days, lots of coffee and bagels, the gland hits the brakes, so it slows you down a little bit so you don't blow a gasket. And it's one of the most complex endocrine organs in the body. And endocrine means hormone producing gland. So on the left here, hypothyroid, meaning low thyroid, fatigue, weight gain, depression. We'll get dry skin. That's a big one. Dry or brittle hair loss, constipation, morning headaches, slow wound healing are just some of the symptoms that you may have with a hypothyroid condition. Hyper is kind of the opposite. You're going to be revved up. You're going to get heart palpitations, sweaty hands, nervousness, increased heart rate, trembling, insomnia, night sweats, and difficult gaining weight. So really, it's going to be, your engine's going to be either real slow or it's going to be real fast. And that's hypo versus hyperthyroid. And we'll talk a little bit about, causes and so forth of those. But the reality is, gang, if you're having those symptoms, say hypo, right? And that's the most common. Hypo is the most common, where you're low thyroid. If you're having those symptoms, your cell is not getting the energy that it needs. And remember, when we're talking about cancer or chronic disease in general, the cell and the mitochondria becomes oxidatively stressed or damaged. And when it is not functioning at its highest level, and hypothyroid will create that, you're going to be more susceptible to chronic disease, period, or aging, basically, right? Because again, if we're not getting the energy and the voltage to those cells are degenerating. And I'll use the term, they're breaking down faster than they can heal. And that's going to be a problem. So that's, again, the tie into chronic disease is very heavy with the thyroid. So anyway, there's different causes or patterns. So one of the things that I want to mention with the thyroid is it's rarely primary. So if I have this thyroid malfunction, if you will, I don't want you to think of it as, oh, I have hypothyroid, they're just giving me meds and that's it. That's not how this works. Most of the time, and I'll explain what I mean by this, the thyroid is not the primary problem, right? It's secondary. It's a secondary response to some other primary issue. So one of the issues that we see in a high number of patients with hypothyroid is something called Hashimoto's. Hashimoto's is an autoimmune condition where your immune system is dysregulated, and it causes, which I'll get into later, and I'll talk about it briefly, it causes the Pac-Man in your body, which we'll parallel that with the immune system. So the Pac-Man of your immune system rev up too much, and it starts to attack the cells. And because of that attack, you get damage to the cells that produce certain hormones, thyroid hormones. So that's a secondary problem. The autoimmune Hashimoto's is the primary problem, that if we can control that, we can slow the attack against the thyroid. But just remember, if you have Hashimoto's, your thyroid is a byproduct of the autoimmune response. So it can be put into remission. It can be controlled if we understand that and know what to look for and what to test. We could have hypopituitary, meaning if I have too much stress, this area of the brain that I'm going to talk about, called the pituitary gland, will slow down and it won't react properly to low levels of your thyroid. So stress can be a big factor. We cannot convert properly T4 to T3, which I'll talk about. We could have elevated binding globulins due to excess estrogen. We could have decreased binding globulins. We could have elevated reverse T3 secondary to stress and inflammation and trauma. And then primary hypothyroidism, where we can't find a cause, and it's primary, right? Which they still say is rare. About only 5% of the patients come in where their thyroid is actually just the problem. It's rare. 95% of the time, it's a secondary problem caused by one of these patterns, which we'll talk about. Okay, so here's the thing. I pulled this from a research article. Thyroid hormones and TSH can directly enhance tumor proliferation through their cell surface receptors, estrogen pathways, angiogenesis, and gene expression regulation, right? Thyroid dysfunction is associated with obesity and vascular diseases, which have been linked to increase in cancer risk or shared common risk factors. So I put this in here because I was doing a little research for this on the link to cancer, and there is ample evidence to show a direct link. So I know I talk about the mitochondria. I talk about slowing the mitochondria and oxidative stress at the cell, which is a clear link. But this gives you a little bit better insight that if the thyroid's not working well, there's an increased risk of chronic disease in general, but cancer being one of those. All right, so let's talk about some of the hormones, because then I'll kind of give you the big picture and get into detail a little bit more. So the thyroid hormone, one of them is thyroid stimulating hormone. Okay. And then there's T4 and T3. So we'll stop there and I'll kind of explain. What happens here is my thyroid produces T4 and T3. About 93% of the hormone that's produced by the thyroid is T4. About 7% roughly is T3. Okay. Having said that, in order to get the usable form of the hormone, which is T3, my body has to convert T4 to T3. And that's the usable form of the hormone. So remember, 93% roughly is T4 released by the thyroid, but the usable form is T3. So our body has to convert a lot of that hormone into T3. So we'll talk about that in a second. But here's generally what happens. If I have low thyroid, right, I'm not producing enough T4 and T3, my brain, called the hypothalamic pituitary axis, keeping it simple, your pituitary gland in your brain, is supposed to respond by increasing TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone. If it works well, okay, my thyroid stimulating hormone will go up, and what it's doing is stimulating the thyroid to make more T4 and T3 because they're low. So when a doctor looks at your levels of TSH and they're high, right away, that's the trigger that says, hey, you're hypothyroid. Again, because your brain, your pituitary gland, is increasing thyroid stimulating hormone to stimulate the thyroid because you're low. So there's a loop. I get low on T4, my brain gets the information, my brain increases TSH, the TSH tells the thyroid, make more thyroid hormone, I make more thyroid hormone, I bring the T4 up, it shuts off. It's called a feedback loop, negative feedback loop. So if that's working well, that's the mechanism. Okay, I get low, I turn on the pituitary makes more TSH, I bring my T4 and T3 up, I'm good to go. That's how it should work, okay? So that's the general 30,000 foot view. But there's more to the story here that I want to explain. And this is important because a lot of the doctors outside of this clinic are only testing a few things. And I'm going to show you that they need to test a lot more in order to thoroughly diagnose a hypothyroid condition. Okay. So one of, like we talked about, thyroxine or T4, and then you have T3, and then you're going to have free T4 and free T3. So T4 and T3 is bound to what they call binding globulin. Not to get too nerdy, but sex hormone binding globulin and albumin are the two binding globulins that carry thyroid hormone around in the bloodstream. And then what they have to do is, it's like a taxi cab. It has to let off the passengers, and then they become free. And the free form of the hormone is what's used at the cellular level. So there's bound form, which is T4 and T3, and free form, which is free T4 and free T3. Okay. So in a good thyroid panel, we should be looking at total T4 and T3 and free T4 and free T3. And I'll tell you why in a second. In addition, there's something called T3 uptake. So if that's high, it means certain things are low. If it's low, the thyroid binding globulin's high. So the T3 uptake can tell us if there's a binding globulin issue, which I'll kind of tie all this together. And then reverse T3. So reverse T3, if that's elevated, we usually are looking at a inflammatory response, maybe a trauma, stress, something like that. So reverse T3 will sit on the receptor site that T3 works on and block it from working, or will convert T3 into reverse T3, but it lowers our T3 levels. Okay, so that's a big one. And I'll explain a little bit more in a second. I'm just getting you familiar with all the hormones that we want to look at. And then the final one, lab panels that we want to look at are your antibodies. So thyroglobulin antibody and TPO antibodies are what help us diagnose Hashimoto's. Okay. There's a TSI antibody that's for Graves' disease. That will be elevated in Graves' disease. We're not going to talk much about Graves because it's not as common, but Graves is an autoimmune condition like Hashimoto's. So if we want to get that better, we have to work on the immune system over here. And I'll talk about that too in a second. So if you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 lab panels, if we wanted to do a very thorough panel, so say somebody came in with all those symptoms that we talked about, fatigue and weight gain and depression and constipation and dry skin, hair, nails, things like that. And we go, wow, this is definitely a hypothyroid patient. Most of the labs that I see only include TSH and T4, okay? And that's very limited, as I'll explain in a second. It's very limited in trying to figure out if they have a hypothyroid problem. So if those two look fine, but yet you have all these symptoms, they're like, you're not hypothyroid. But I'll explain what this all means. there's more to the story, most likely, if you have all those symptoms. And then finally, these antibodies to diagnose Hashimoto's are often left out of the equation as well. So let's talk about this process, because this is important. So don't get too caught up in the thyroid TRH here, because that's another step that I think will just confuse you. But here's what happens. I get low on T4 or T3, and my brain gets the information, the pituitary, so I increase thyroid stimulating hormone, okay? So the TSH will increase metabolic activity of the cells to activate this TRH, don't worry too much about that, to produce T4, 93% of what the thyroid produces is T4, and T3, which is 7%, by transporting iodine into the cell, right? So iodine is a factor in whether or not you're able to transport your T4 and T3. So that's in part where iodine becomes a factor, right? And a lot of people these days are low on iodine. So now, having said that, the usable form of the thyroid hormone is T3. So if you see here, 93% though is made by the thyroid is T4. So we have to, in our body, convert T4 to active T3. So 60% of that occurs in your liver, 20% occurs in the gut, and 20% of the conversion happens in your peripheral tissues. So the point I'll make is gut and liver play a huge factor in whether you're able to convert T4 to T3. Okay. So if we're just looking at TSH and T4, but not looking at T3, the usable form of the hormone, we're going to miss part of the story. Okay. And that's a big factor, because sometimes we don't see that tested, and somebody's like, no, they said I'm fine, but yet they're not converting well because they have liver and gut problems. That's a huge factor. All right. So if you are suffering with a lot of symptoms and you've been told you're fine, probably testing all 9 of those lab panels with your thyroid is probably a good idea. So anyway, that we have another part of the story. Remember, you have bound hormone and free hormone. So one of the patterns is that we're having too many taxicabs, and we're not able to release the T4 into free T4 or release the T3 in the free T3. And one of the things that increases the binding globulins is going to be estrogen, either estrogen dominance or elevated estrogens due to, it could be the xenoestrogens, it could be estrogen therapy that you're taking, hormone therapy. So we have to keep an eye on these things as well. So again, we have the TSH, the T4, and the T3, but then we also have the free T4 and the free T3, and the ability to convert those, okay? The T4 and the T3, and that happens mainly in the gut and the liver. So again, here's the patterning that you'll see, and I'll go through this somewhat quickly because I think you get the idea. If I have stress and my pituitary gland is not working well, so this is kind of the PTSD area, what's going to happen is I'll have low T4, but I'll also have low TSH because the pituitary gland is not stimulating or not working properly and not responding to the low levels of T4. So remember, if I have low T4, I should have elevated TSH, right? But if my pituitary is not working well, I'm going to have low TSH and low T4. So that's a common, if we see somebody with a lot of stress, that's a common cause of hypothyroidism. But remember, that's not exactly a thyroid issue. It's really a stress mediated issue, right? So again, not primary, secondary. All right, so thyroid under conversion. We may not be converting T4 to T3. So remember, 80% of that conversion, 60% in the liver, 20% in the gut. So if we have gut and liver issues, we may not getting converting T4 into T3, okay? So we need to look at that. So that's why we test those. If we have not enough taxicabs or binding globulins, we could have elevated amounts of T4 and T3. But the more common one is that we have too many binding globulins. So we have less T4 and less T3, okay? Because free forms of those, because we're holding on to those as much as we don't want it, that's what happens. And the elevated binding globulins could be caused by elevated estrogen, okay? And then reverse T3, one of the ones that we talked about, This can happen from trauma, inflammation. Stress is a big one. So what happens is our T3 can get converted into reverse T3. It's a reaction by the body from that stress, or the reverse T3 can sit on the receptor site and block T3 from entering. So that could be another cause of hypothyroidism. Okay. But again, not a thyroid problem, more of a stress problem. Okay. So real quick, if you have symptoms of both, which is basically a low engine and a high engine, like heart palpitations, but you're tired and fatigued, things like that, most likely you have Hashimoto's. But what happens is the cells get attacked, they release a lot of T4 into the system, and you get a storm, which will create almost a hyperthyroid type of symptom. Okay. So you can have both, but really most of the time it's going to be low thyroid and Hashimoto's. And those labs, those 9 labs that we talked about, can identify all of those for you. So all those patterns we just talked about can be identified by the TSH, T4, T3, free T4, free T3, reverse T3, T3 uptake, and then your antibodies, which is TPO and thyroglobulin. So if you want to write those down, because those are critical, if you're having hypothyroid symptoms and you haven't been diagnosed, those labs will be able to help, but you need somebody that knows how to read them all. Because as Dr. Keneally will tell you, the conventional model will look at TSH and T4 mainly, right?
Correct.
But not necessarily look at all these other ones.
Yeah, they don't look at the entire panel, the whole picture. That's the bottom line. So
okay. So hopefully, gang, I know I covered that kind of quickly, but the big picture is it's not primary a lot of times. There's a lot of primary issues that cause your thyroid to malfunction or cause lack of conversion or too many binding globulins, things like that. So our objective is to make sure we identify those so we fix the problem so you can no longer have a thyroid issue, okay, or be hypothyroid. So we talked, just to catch Dr. Keneally up, we talked about the metabolic engine. We talked about the mitochondria and how supportive it is, the thyroid is to the mitochondria and that cellular health. And when you have mitochondrial defect, chronic disease can ensue because of the lack of ATP and energy and oxidative stress that happens to that cell.
right.
So as I told you initially, I'm going to get through the immune. This is kind of the immune system. It's a little much, but Dr. Keneally really wanted to talk about the voltage and the energy part of this. So I'll kind of move over, let her get in here a little bit.
All right, great.
And anyway, this is Dr. Keneally, everybody. Sorry, I didn't do a proper intro.
That's all right. No, that's fine. So welcome, everybody. I'm glad you're all here. And so the thyroid, as Dr. Roney said, is the battery to every single cell in your body. So if you do not have proper thyroid functioning, then you are not going to have any proper voltage. Voltage is like a battery. If you don't have good voltage there, it's not going to turn on the radio or the little device that you want it to turn on. So every cell in your body, thinking of it, we're an electronic machine, believe it or not. I always tell people we're a bio-emotional spiritual, we're a biochemical. Like if you look at all the blood work, that's biochemical, but we're a bioenergetic being, okay? And so we need to have the proper voltage of every cell. And what dictates that is the amount of free T3 in your system. That's why everybody who's getting blood tests done on their thyroid should have the TSH, free T3, free T4. Now, if we suspect the conditions Dr. Roney already talked about, we probably need to do a more elaborate array, because if you don't have your thyroid, for example, if someone has their thyroid completely removed and they don't have their thyroid, they won't be alive. It's that important, okay? So it's one endocrine system. Women can live without estrogen, but women and men cannot live without their thyroid. Yeah. It's that important. Yeah.
Receptor site, there's a thyroid receptor site I mentioned on every cell of the human body.
Right, exactly. So it is that important. So the problem and the reason why we are talking about this so much is that people who have low thyroid have higher predisposition to cancer. They have higher predisposition to many things because their battery is not working for them. And so when we talked about the voltage, the normal voltage of a cell is minus 25 volts. We're making cells every nanosecond in our body. So we need energy to make those new cells, but we need energy of 50 millivolts to make the new cells. So if I hit with a hammer Dr. Roney's thumb, then he's going to need many volts of energy to repair the injured thumb. And so we have what takes our energy away. Well, if you go to the next slide, and it tells you the things. So these are all the things that take energy away. So if we drink chemical water, a couple of weeks ago, I looked up in my zip code, my water, and it has many, many, many chemicals. I encourage you to do the same thing, is go to ewg.org and put in your zip code, and it says what the water, it's heavy metals and chemicals. So you must have a good water purification system. Then if you drink, Cokes and any kind of carbonated beverages, caffeinated beverage, alcohol, cooked food, processed foods, it's like if we touch a sick patient, they're going to take our energy away. So that's why I do things every day to provide energy. That's why we have pulsed electromagnetic fields, scan our red light. We have all these things to provide energy to our body. And so anyway, fans are not good. Hair dryers, dental infections. We're not going to talk about that tonight, but dental infections are very important, whether you have mercury fillings and or root canal. Root canal will drop the voltage tremendously, probably like 50, 60% with the root canal. Root canal is a chronic infection. Heavy metals are pervasive in our system. Mercury, lead, cadmium, genetically modified food, fluorine, fluoride that's in the water, vaccines, radiation, chemotherapy, pharmaceuticals. So this is, probably everything that we're
basically living, right?
Exactly. So anyway, and cancer cells, the reason what happens is if we don't have enough voltage in the cell, the pH drops and we become acidic. Cancer is low oxygen. Well, first of all, it has low voltage, then low voltage. You have acidic pH. When you have acidic pH, you have low oxygen. And so here we have, and then you don't know, if you start with a couple of cells, you don't really feel anything. And then you get more cells and more cells, then your body gets in this very, very compromised, challenged state.
Yeah, you're creating an environment that's
right.
conducive for chronic disease.
Right. So these are the things that you want to be doing every day to get voltage. One, the biggest thing that you can do is go walk barefoot on sand or any kind of natural ground, any kind of natural substance. That's why it's so good to go barefoot. Getting sunshine every day. Certain kind of lasers do lots of energy. We have several different lasers here, but lasers are in the right wavelengths are very good. We do topical lasers here. We do IV lasers. We have pulsed electromagnetic field. I mentioned things. Also the scanner device, also human touch. So getting lymphatic drainage here, massage here, acupuncture, all those are great, wonderful things. The tenant biomodulator, we're going to do a separate cancer conversation on this. So that is something that I personally do every single day. Essential oils are very good electron donors. So but these are the things that you want to be utilizing in your day-to-day to add energy to the cell. So what we do here, you're probably wondering, how do we measure voltage? So you have acupuncture points all over your body, and every acupuncture point, it relates to an organ in the system. And so we use something called the MEAD device, a meridian energy assessment device, and that checks the voltage in all your acupuncture meridians. So we assess where you are low voltage. And then we use the biomodulator to correct those energy voltage drains. And so that is something this is something that's known, but we've recently added to our armamentarium, and I think a very important missing piece of our entire cancer care. So now all the patients are getting routinely evaluated on this methodology.
You think about starting points, right? You have to have step A. You were saying it even earlier to the doctors. You have to have step A before you get to step B. If you have low voltage at the cellular level, a lot of things will be harder to work. Right. A lot of the treatments, a lot of the care. So it can sound a little funky, but at the same time, cells are all energy. It's all energy.
Right.
Everything's energy and voltage. So if it's low, and again, to your point, if we're low oxygen and acidic and so forth, we're going to have low voltage. You wouldn't have a chronic disease if you had high voltage for the most part.
Right. That's correct.
It just-
Yeah.
yeah.
If you have good voltage, you don't have disease.
Yeah.
That's absolutely, this is true. So that's why. So these are some of the supplements. You probably
Yeah. Yeah.
can talk about that.
Well, so when we talk about some of the functions and the conversions and having to use, there's something called 5-deiodinase that has to be used in order to convert T4 to T3. You need things in your body like selenium and copper, right? You need B1, B3, B6, that's vitamin B1, B3, B6. You need vitamin C. You need some of these things in order to create the proper the environment for the thyroid to actually function well. So some of the supplements that they put out, I really just wanted to kind of show these because they contain like iThyroid iodine. It contains a lot of these things along with a little bit of iodine to make sure, if you remember where iodine was needed, the thyroid needs iodine to produce T4 and T3.
Right. And all of your cells need iodine anyway.
So, and if I'm not mistaken, a large majority of the patients now are low on iodine, right?
Right. Yeah. So I personally take iodine every day.
Yeah.
Because the reason why are we so? Because we have a group of chemicals called halogens. Halogens are fluorine, chlorine, and bromide. So all of these halogens are in the environment, whether they're in the water supply, you go swimming, you go in a whirlpool, you're getting exposed to all these. So those displace our thyroid.
Right.
And in the iodine in the thyroid. So that's why you have to constantly replenish the system with iodine.
And I'll talk briefly about if say you're low, we find you're low on T4 and T3. Now, we could, depending if it's not too low, we could work through the causes that I mentioned in the initial part of this lecture, the cancer conversation. But sometimes we're just slightly low or functionally low. And I didn't get into that because the ranges that we look at, the lab ranges that come back are this wide. But we want to look at them within the functional level,
right?
Which means 100% of the people do really well in this level. That's where we're looking to get you. So if you're not low on the lab ranges, but you're out of our functional ranges, we may not go right to NP thyroid or nature thyroid. We may use some of these supplements
to activate it.
Yes.
Correct.
To give you the right amount of iodine, to give you the right amount of selenium and copper, and make sure you're getting the B1, B3, B6s, vitamin C's in order to make this work properly. So it depends. If we're real low and you're struggling, the NP thyroids, the Armors, the nature thyroids could be a good
option.
Good option for you.
Right. And if patients are on levothyroxine or Synthroid, that's only T4. Correct. So those patients really need to have their T3 checked. Now, an optimal T3 is somewhere between 3 and 4. So if you get your blood test, make sure you're looking at that level to make sure it's in an optimal level.
Yeah. Great point. Okay. So selenium, right? We mentioned it. It's a key catalyst along with copper. And we're seeing a lot of people low on copper over the last couple of years, especially because high levels of zinc, which people have been taking during the pandemic, and rightfully so, it's a very good antiviral, but that also can lower copper levels.
Right. So that's why it's always good to use zinc and copper together in one supplement.
So there's reactive zinc. And so we use those, and then there'll be one GF thyroid.
That's very good supplement.
It is. It's another one that has a lot of these things in it. There are ones also that help convert T4 to T3 better because remember, liver and gut is where 80% of the conversion happens. So I guess the quick point I'll make is if you've been tested and say you're taking Levo, say a T4 substitute, but you're still having a lot of symptoms, to Dr. Keneally's point, your T3 is probably affected, or some of these other things could be affected that they haven't looked at. So just caveat, you can, at least now you can ask for different things here. So same thing, copper, selenium, zinc, these things have those in them, these supplements.
Right.
And the only reason I'm mentioning it is because there could be just you're slightly low on some of these things.
Because you're deficient in these
Yes.
to make it all work.
Exactly.
And so what we do, I like to energy
Yeah.
test patients to easily see, what is going to be compatible with them. So, and then this is a comprehensive supplement by Thorne that again combines the necessary ingredients for the whole thyroid concert to work.
Yeah, this one really works to stimulate the thyroid. Okay, so next cancer conversation, we're going to take questions for sure. But Dr. Pitak will be on here, and she's going to go through healing from radiation therapy, incredible results from therapies like hyperbaric, CVAC, acupuncture, and hydrogen washes, as well as some of the supplements. So high-tech treatment series number 2. Okay, that'll be on April 11th, 2023. So our next couple, right? That'll be, our next one. Okay. So we'll get to this in a second. I want to pull up questions, right? And let's make sure we get to as many tonight as we can. So let's see. Florida, now that doctors from your clinic speak, I used to be the best answer to cancer. Let's see. I used to go to best answer.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, best answer to cancer is kind of on hold. Are there any conferences in Florida? Yeah. Well, the one in Florida is there's the Appleseed Conference. There are conferences. You just kind of have to, the best place that lists conferences is in the back of Townsend Letter, which is, if you look up the Townsend Letter, it's in the back of Townsend Letter, which I think has gone completely online. But that's a great complementary integrative medicine. And in the back, they offer all the conferences. So that would be a good place to look.
All right. So thyroid nodules, we get this a lot. And we see a lot of people with it. What's your thought there?
Right. Well, first of all, you want to make sure that the thyroid nodule is not a large nodule that needs to be biopsied. And then if it's stable and less than the, 15 millimeters which is kind of the number they go by, you should be getting routinely annual ultrasounds to make sure the stability of those thyroid nodules. Second of all, you want to immediately evaluate your diet because a lot of food allergies, especially wheat, is very offensive to the thyroid gland. So I would get off the things you're allergic to, but especially wheat, because the wheat here is not what it used to be 50 years ago. So, but it's a very allergenic substance for the thyroid gland. The other thing you want to start doing, you want to probably take iodine. Okay. You can check your iodine levels, but you definitely want to take iodine on a regular basis. You want to start detoxification because detoxification for all of us is probably the most important thing that you need to do every day. So the heavy lifting we recommend is the 21-day purification protocol. And if you want to do that, just call directly the store and they can send that to you. But we usually have almost every single patient do that once a year. Then you need to do some kind of regular purification. So I either tell people invest in an infrared sauna or they do baths. So the Epsom salts, baking soda, and clay. I tell people this is not like in living in this world today, it's what we all have to do. Every day I see patients and all kinds, all types, everything. Okay. And everyone has the same kind of problems because we're all living in the same environment. And unfortunately, I tell people, it may not be your fault, but it is your problem. We've got to deal with the environment we're living with. And we're not going to, right now, we're not going to change the environment right now. The air pollution, the water pollution, the food pollution, the EMF, we're not going to change it. But you can create your own personal health sanctuary. And we need to have high reverence for the human miracle that we all live in each and every day. And so this is just the way it is. There's lots of books written on this. We're trying to get it out each and every day and educate everyone and empower everybody to take charge of their health, because you can't today, unfortunately, go to the ER to get healthy, and you can't go to your doctor for the most part to get healthy because the doctors aren't taught health. They're not taught health. Yeah, it's very, very sick health. And we're all about getting you very healthy and optimized so you don't need an ER and a doctor and a hospital. So anyway, so you've got to detox regularly, you know.
And nodules, we see a lot.
Oh,
Hashimoto's,
right.
really, we see a strong correlation between the Hashimoto's, which causes the proliferation of the cells, and nodules. So that's a strong correlation that you want to be evaluating.
Right. And I do have an essential oil remedy that I usually have the patients put on their thyroid for the nodules.
We'll maybe get that and send it
Yeah,
out.
we can send it out.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Armor better than Levoxyl?
Well, Armor is T4 and T3. It's a natural form of thyroid. They changed the formula though in the last 5 or 7 years. So I personally prefer NP thyroid. I have thyroid problems, so I try them all. I did not feel good at all on Levoxyl or Synthroid, so I can't even take it. It doesn't work for me. And so I take NP thyroid. And when Nature Thyroid was around, which I'm sure will come back, that was an excellent thyroid product. So Levoxyl is only T4. So you're only getting one of things. So if your T3 is great on Levoxyl, okay, great. But if it's not, then you probably need to take a combination of T4, T3. The studies show that patients did better on a combination thyroid, so of T4 and T3.
So it brings up, which is better long-term, Armor or compounded T3? Really
well,
depends on,
it depends on how good what you feel best on and what your blood tests show.
Yeah, because remember, Armor is T4 and T3, where compounded T3 is just the T3. So you might need the T4 with it.
Yes,
right?
That's correct.
Yeah. All right, stage 4 papillary follicular variant different. Okay, I always brush through these, but they don't see these, so I'll read it.
Okay.
So
I see.
Can stage 4 papillary follicular variant differentiated cancer be slowed or stopped without RAI therapy, for example, with natural substances like genistein, curcumin, EGCG, resveratrol, melatonin?
Well, who knows until you try it. But I will tell you that the standard of care will be to remove the thyroid and the lymph nodes and do a radical neck dissection and do radioactive iodine. Okay. So of course you can't personally, because I have many patients here who are stage 4 cancer. They said they were cured with just a surgery. So when you tell somebody you're cured, you better make sure that everything is perfect in that patient, and the environment and the soul and the tumor microenvironment is in tip-top shape. And that's not what happens. I will tell you right now, because no doctor will talk to you about diet. Nobody will talk to you about oxygenation. No one will talk to you about the pH of the body. We know what the pH, nobody talks about the causes, like for example, if you have shingles, that's a sign. If you have recurrent shingles, and I sent this out to all the doctors last week, there is possibly an underlying malignancy draining the immune system and causing this to occur. So that's why we always constantly work up and go down the rabbit hole with every single patient, addressing every single underlying factor. So, and the doctors don't do it because we see patients from all over everywhere. They do 2 blood tests, a chemistry and a CBC, and they have no idea how the patient's living. I had a patient here locally. She has cholangiocarcinoma, which for some reason I've seen 4 cases, very rare cancer. Recently. And she's 43 and she lives locally. And all they have done is do a chemistry and a CBC, obviously give her chemotherapy. She's also had major surgery. And unfortunately, they have not done any proper testing why this happened. Here she is 43 to have a rare kind of cancer. She has no idea. So she's relatively new. So we're figuring out this puzzle with her. So.
All right. So knowing reverse T3 important, and why my doctor does not like to test it can be.
Well, I had a patient said their doctor didn't want to test thing, and the patient had thyroid cancer after 2 years and 14 ENT specialists. So I always tell people, your squeaky wheel gets the oil. Make sure you are your own advocate. Go to another doctor who will check and be an advocate for you. You are in partnership with your physician.
So reverse T3, remember, inflammation, right? Trauma and stress are big factors in why reverse T3 would be. So if that's in your history, then that would be a good indicator. Was the helmet that doctor was showing, would love to know more about helmet with Met Blue. Oh, that was me. Quick, video.
So that's what I do every morning is I charge myself and do the methylene blue with the Weber helmet. The Weber helmet it has lights in it. Okay. It's infrared and red lights, and it has all different wavelengths to enhance all different functions of the brain. And since I use my brain every day and I'm not, 40 anymore, I need to do things that enhance my health. And so I do that with the methylene blue. Methylene blue is the oldest drug ever developed. And methylene blue, we use a liposomal, which means it's in a fat molecule and it's time released over the body, is one of the most amazing things that anyone can take. So methylene blue, it's actually blue. It's this beautiful blue color that they use for staining tissues. And it is an antioxidant. It's a scavenger of free radicals. It helps the neurons turn on. So it helps the brain amazingly turn on all of the nervous system. It is amazing to eradicate viruses, bacteria, and fungi. It helps the mitochondria work great. It has all these multifunctional issues. So I encourage, it's a very easy thing to do. So you don't have to do the Weber helmet. You can just use a red light panel to activate it, because we have photoreceptor sites in our cells. And so the cells take up the blue, and the red activates those cells to take it up. So you don't have to do the helmet. I'm just using the helmet as a, mini multi-purpose function. And, but it's very, very good. So.
All right. So I've read conflicting info on the keto diet for cancer fighting diet. Some people say it's okay to eat legumes, oatmeal, and fruit. Is natural sugar from food okay in moderation? For example, it says berries in moderation. Does that mean a couple a day or more like once a week?
No, well, blueberries are probably one of the most nutritious foods you can eat. So I look at your hemoglobin A1C. The hemoglobin A1C is a reflection of your sugar over 90 days. So you want to know that test. So ideal for us is about 5.0. All right. Most people, unfortunately, probably 75% of the population is pre-diabetic to diabetic. Unfortunately, that's what we see. Well, sugar causes Alzheimer's and has a predisposition to cancer. I don't think it causes cancer. It creates the cellular environment that brings down the functionality of the cell. And then also heart disease plays a major role with blood sugar. So anyway, the keto is not like, it just depends on your blood work and what's going on in your system. Everyone is their own unique template, and we can't compare what you need compared to the next person. So we've got to customize, your fingerprint and of the insides, just as we would do anything. I mean, I always tell people, all of us are in of one. Yeah. We're our own experiment. And you've got to, we know that there's some commonalities, but then what do you need? So I don't have any problem with eating berries for you or in fruit. The fruit has a high energy. It's an electron donor. So it's just that what is your sugar? And like oatmeal's good, but oatmeal is a carbohydrate. So I always tell patients, combine it with a fat like butter or coconut oil or
heavy
cream, something like that, and add protein. So you can add protein powder to it. When I made it for my kids, I added protein powder to it. Or you can eat a serving of cottage cheese. And so then you don't have this insulin surge if you combine a fat with a protein and a favorable carb.
All right. I'm being treated at the Center for Low Thyroid, and my only symptom is stiff joints. I exercise, stretch every day for at least 90 minutes, but my shoulders still feel stiff. I'm 81, so I thought it must be my age. Please let me know if it is because of my low thyroid, which has gotten almost normal.
Well, joint pain. Well, congratulations on being 81 and still working out 90 minutes. That's impressive.
Yeah.
So you're doing pretty good in my book. And so you may need a little tweaking on something if you still have, because I know as we age, I lift weights 3 times a week, and my right shoulder, it's like it hurts now. And I'm like, okay, maybe I need to, what am I deficient? First thing I think is what I'm deficient in, what is wrong that I'm getting this pain.
Yeah, it's inflammatory usually
exactly.
To some degree.
So anyway, I'll probably bring down the weights, keep doing the weights, but just bring them down. And there's tweaking, and like if you have, one of the best things for joint pain is taking curcumin. Curcumin is the spice from turmeric.
Mhm.
Take 2 or 3 twice a day. It acts like, my patients use it like ibuprofen. So,
Yeah.
but if we need, and collagen, you might need some collagen. Also, collagen helps build healthy joints. Boron maybe also may be necessary. So, our joints as we age, you don't have arthritis when you're 30. You have arthritis after 50.
Mhm.
So lots of things have taken place.
Yeah. So, and with that, if the thyroid has gotten normal, that's good. And that kind of excuses a variable maybe, and then it could be some other things going on. So it's good deductive for your provider here to take a look at that for you. 5-year thyroid cancer survivor here. Congrats, Amy. That's great. Why do most doctors check thyroglobulin and thyroglobulin AB for follow-up? How do you keep the AB low? And why would they be there if there is no thyroid?
Well, you still have the energy of your thyroid still there. Just because your organ is absent doesn't mean the energy of that gland is not there, like your gallbladder or thyroid, doesn't matter. And so your thyroid globulin is the protein that is going against the thyroid. So you've got an autoimmune. So you've got to take away all the immune factors, which Dr. Roney already brought up, whether it's chemicals, viruses, bacteria, candida, everything. So you got to eliminate all those, because the thyroid globulin is a sign of Hashimoto's and or if you have thyroid cancer. So obviously doing the necessary things to protect the home place of the thyroid. So the thyroid globulin being a marker. So
all right. Should I take iodine? Some say yes, others say no. Best way to take iodine.
Well, I think everybody should take iodine because of all the halogens that I mentioned earlier, displacing our normal iodine. So I personally put iodine on I just put like 4 or 5 drops on my forearm. And then it should, if you do that, and if it lasts 24 hours, then you're sufficient.
Yeah, you're good. If it sucks in, pretty much goes away quickly, like a Lugol's iodine right on the skin.
Then you'll know that you don't have enough.
Yeah, you probably need some. So since having COVID in August of 2021, not feeling well, thyroid keeps fluctuating and B cells abnormal. Can you comment on why that might be?
Well, because what we found is that having COVID or COVID vaccine does something to the dysregulation of our interferon in our entire immune system. And so some people have it, some people don't get it, everybody's different. And so you need to probably, do some workup to figure out, one, I would do a cleanse for sure, because I had a patient with long haul COVID and we did cleansing. He did cleanse twice and then IV NAD, and he was back. He said he hadn't felt that good in 20 years. So, again, everybody's situation is unique. And I was reading in one of my journals like yesterday or today, I forget when, about how the neurological effects are so extreme in COVID. And that's one of the best, methylene blue is one of the best things for that. So.
All right. So is having half a thyroid with Hashimoto's as well as thyroid cancer a candidate to ever be off medications of any kind?
Well, sure. If you can resuscitate your thyroid and get it better, your body's in a healing state, hopefully all the time. At least that's what you're trying to do. That's why you'd see a practitioner like us, is that, you want to be in a healing state. And definitely I've had patients get rid of their Hashimoto's just by doing, all the things we're talking about. So
you got to clean up the fuels to the fire. So anything that's creating the immune system to attack is going to create immune dysregulation leading to Hashimoto. So you get all those tested. Same causes for cancer are very similar to the causes for any chronic disease, including autoimmune, right?
Exactly.
So, okay. So I don't know what's happening there, but I had this lined up.
Right. That one.
This one. Okay. So 40 years old, diagnosed with papillary carcinoma, July 2022. Since my refusal to do the surgery, I've been on various supplements to build my immunity, vitamin C, tightening my plant-based diet. The funny thing is all my thyroid hormone levels showed as normal. So no doctor thought something was off. So my questions are, is it normal to have normal thyroid hormone levels, yet you have the cancer? And what is the best thing I could do for myself to heal regarding diet and supplements?
Right. Well, you can have normal thyroid and have cancer. So So definitely, unless they did a thyroid globulin, the thyroid globulin will most likely be elevated if you were to have thyroid cancer. So what's the best thing to do? Well, everything we're talking about, you should partner with an integrative functional physician so that you're not putting yourself at danger. Because like what, it's okay to take charge of your health, but make sure that you're verifying it with an expert who knows and understands this to make sure that you're making the right decisions.
Yeah. So when they say all my thyroid hormone levels showed normal, is that
what was that
is
done?
that all of them?
No.
Is that
Yeah.
maybe
Which
the
ones
9
did
that
they
we
do?
talked
Right.
about, or and that's always a caveat. So okay, so typically, how long does papillary carcinoma
Take to go
away? Does it spread, as the doctors have been scaring me that it might? Does it come back?
Yeah. So thyroid cancer can spread. So I have, they tell the patient, oh, if you get thyroid surgery, you're going to be cured. But if you can only say someone's cured when you have a circulating tumor cell of 0. And so most doctors are not checking circulating tumor cells. So circulating tumor cells are responsible for 95% of metastasis. So unless they've done that test, so it's the thyroid cancer, which is one platform, and then it's the circulating tumor cells is another platform.
Which I mentioned early in our pillar 1, we talked about RGCC, Signatera, tests like that.
Correct.
That could test the circulating tumor cells. They're the cells that have broken off the original tumor and are circulating in the bloodstream. So we talked about that. So yeah, if they're still there, then there's a high chance, as Dr. Keneally said, for reoccurrence. But that's what they're not looking at. They're saying, hey, everything looks good from our vantage point. But we go in and do that liquid biopsy and find out if their circulating tumor cells are high. We're not done.
Right.
Plus, we're not done anyway because we're working on causes and boosting the immune system and oxygenating and alkalizing.
Right. So any doctor who tells you you're cured, I want to make sure they've done every single test. Your viruses are gone. Candida, 85% of cancer patients have fungus. Yep. Most of them have parasites. I mean, you've got to make sure that the slate is clean. So I wouldn't say that you're cured unless you're doing the proper evaluation and test to figure that out. So,
and we're probably one of the few that do it all.
Head to toe, exactly.
Honestly. Pawpaw from Nature
Pawpaw, of course, we've been using that a long time. That's one of many things that are anti-cancer that actually comes up on the RGCC as killing circulating tumor cells. So yes, we do use that.
Potential best diet way to eat for thyroid cancer survival, such as plant-based?
Well, plant-based. Well, you can, if you do plant-based, you've got to make sure you have enough protein. For all of us, everybody needs adequate protein. Your body, you won't have muscles if you don't eat protein. Right. So yes, you can do plant-based protein, but you've got to make sure that your iron and ferritin is good, your vitamin levels are good from doing a plant-based, and that you have adequate protein to develop the muscular structure that you need. Yeah. So that might be the best program for you. You'll know because and after a month of doing it, you're going to go, oh my goodness, I feel really good. So, but you've got to make sure that your nutritional status is good. You got to make sure that you're, making the necessary muscles that your body needs to carry you.
I think the rule of thumb I like to talk to patients about is eating real food, right? So if you're on an island, what could you eat? You could pick it or chase it. And so if you're not inclined to do meat, I'm still a fan and do pasture raised and pasture finished and clean, of course. But the idea is if you're eating real food, healthy fats and healthy carbohydrates and vegetables and low glycemic fruits and things like that, you're going to win, I think, with that diet. I find it hard to believe that an organic diet like that, real food, is contributing highly to cancers. Right. That's my opinion.
It's mostly the chemicals and all the toxins
and all that stuff. And then the bad food, the processed and all that stuff. So what are some of the root causes of thyroid cancer?
Yeah, well, you better look at your mouth, you better look at mercury filling, you better look at root canals, you better look at all the things we talked about are very important in thyroid cancer.
I heard you once mention you don't give glutathione to cancer patients. Would you please elaborate on this and why you stay away from it with cancer patients? It seems to be one of those subjects that some say yay and others say nay.
Right. You're
True.
right about that. But what I've read, I always tell people there's something in science called the precautionary principle. So we need to honor that and say, look, because we can make glutathione by lipoic acid and N-acetylcysteine.
It's vitamin
And,
C.
and certain foods also can help you make glutathione. So I think it's a good idea to look at the things naturally that you can do. I think glutathione is a good thing. It's a great thing. It's one of your, it is your master antioxidant.
Yep.
But at the same time, we have to err on the side of caution if we're fighting cancer.
Is it true that there's some evidence that the cancer cells will use glutathione potentially to protect themselves
And to grow. Right.
Yeah. Now, non-cancer, I use it every day.
Yeah.
Glutathione is part of my.
I do too. So.
But so is it true that taking thyroid meds causes bone loss? I don't know if ever.
No. If you have too elevated of a thyroid, if you have too elevated of a thyroid, there is a possibility you may have too much activity of the bone breaking down. So, but bone issues are like, that's a whole nother topic.
Right.
So,
Right. Yeah.
So.
Okay, if someone manages to resolve their thyroid problem, will the visible external swelling disappear? Depends if that's the only cause.
Yeah, well, I had a patient today who came to see me for thyroid cancer. And so she has already taken it in her health in her hands and already started doing things and have already seen a dramatic change in her thyroid and the swelling of her neck and everything, doing lots of, different things. So
detoxing, cleaning up the body, basically.
She changed her diet. She's doing all kinds of, everything. So
again, going back to, if you're taking away the fuels to the fire, and fire being inflammation, you're going to have less fire, which is going to help significantly. All right. So someone manages to resolve their thyroid problem. Oh, I already read that one. Symptoms of both low and high thyroid function. That's usually Hashimoto's.
What if I have said, oh, you have both? So that means, So you need to, you need to get that evaluated and have someone help you with that, because that's not fun.
Yeah.
Living on a roller coaster.
That's right. So that's with the heart palpitations, and then you could have, and that's the storm that we talked about initially, the thyroid storm. All right. So a couple more here. What is the effect of high doses of melatonin, 20 to 60 milligrams, on thyroid health of a patient with thyroid nodules and lobular hormone positive breast cancer? Is it safe to take melatonin, or better to avoid it?
No, it's great. No, melatonin is anti-cancer, antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, phenomenal substance, topically and orally, and we use it rectally also for sleep. So yes, it's very good.
Okay, so hi, good evening. I'm male, gender 61. I do not have thyroid cancer, but I'm taking methimazole. My specialist has been tweaking the dose to get my TSH into the normal range. Just would like your thoughts.
Right, methimazole may be necessary medication to get the thyroid stabilized in normals while you take the time to make all the changes that we talked about. And so definitely, hopefully you won't need to stay on methimazole, but you should start working on all the things we talked about tonight.
Good test for iodine. We talked about the rubbing it, put some Lugol's iodine, maybe a quarter size, and then seeing if it
lasts 24 hours.
Yeah, exactly. Let's see. Hypothyroidism cause cancer. So we kind of addressed that initially as far as.
Well, because if you have low thyroid, you have low voltage. Low voltage causes low oxygen and acidity. So you have this environment for cancer because you have low voltage. Cancer is always low voltage, low energy. Always think about that. So.
All right, we'll do two more. Hello, I recently had to get an ultrasound and they stated I have 5 masses, nodules or tumors, all different sizes. Also take 100 milligram progesterone the last year. What are my next steps?
Well, the doctor we need to look at the radiology report to decide if you need a biopsy, and then you need to start doing, all the things we talked about. I would start a cleanse first. I would start rubbing the essential oils that I talked to you about. that we'll send out.
Mhm.
And then I would,
Test for Hashimoto's for
right,
sure.
exactly, do a complete thyroid
Mhm.
function test. There's something called that I gave the patient today called the Polaroid disc, and I don't have it in to show you. It looks like a disc, and it looks like it's based upon Nikola Tesla and Dr. Lakowski, and it has concentric circles on the disc, and we use it to balance the chakras, the 7 chakras of your body, and one of your chakras is the thyroid chakra. So she's going to be doing that every day and putting it on her thyroid, or just putting it on her thyroid. I told her to do it periodically. It's amazing device that works amazing. So
Voltage, right? Like you said.
yeah, so that's something everyone should do because of all the EMFs, that we have in the environment. They're stealing our electrons on a regular basis. So
let's see, connective tissue disorders. Can thyroid disorders cause connective tissue disorders?
well, thyroid can cause any because again, you don't have energy to the cell to take care of you.
So yeah, I would say without a doubt,
Yeah,
that could be a major contributing factor. All right, so that's, gang, we're at 21 after, so we're a little bit over, so we're going to call it. Thank you for the questions. We will get them answered as we always do and send them out to you. So we appreciate you being here. I want to just give you some of the numbers. We always get calls the next day. We always get inquiries. So I want to make sure you have these numbers. So the cancercenterforhealing.com, you see the website here. The number 949-867-6374 is the number to call if you have cancer or you're trying to prevent reoccurrence. Dana and Vicky will help you over there. They do a really good job. On the center side, if you're looking for testing or you're looking for wellness or trying to get some things corrected, 949-867-6419, cfnmedicine.com. Miles does a really good job there as well of processing. So you can contact either of those numbers. And then the supplement store is 949-997-0821, shopcfnmedicine.com. Okay, so I just wanted to make sure you had those, but I'll let Dr. Keneally kind of wrap up.
right. So I think the biggest thing I really want to expound upon before we leave is that I was reading that autism is now 1 in 36 people. This is something I didn't learn in medical school. There was maybe a paragraph mentioned. Now there's libraries on it. There's buildings on it. There's books on it. And now we're seeing in teenagers, the largest amount of children with anxiety, depression, suicide, and violence. And now we're seeing the largest amount of 30-year-olds with cancer, all different kinds of cancer, 25, 30, 35-year-olds. And then, of course, we see the people that are older that have cancer because their body the immune system starts declining. So what I'm saying is cancer is about 1 in 2 people, expected to increase by 4% per year. And we have the opportunity for prevention, early detection, human optimization before you even get diagnosed with cancer. I know over the years, it's never been selling though. It doesn't get you to just get on the phone and say, look, I need to take care of myself. I am the most valuable thing to myself. But you have to do, once you take charge and you start implementing, and a patient told me today, well, I'm not perfect. I said, no, we're not trying to be perfect. We're not, he and I aren't perfect. Okay. So I like to go out to eat on Friday night. What's one of the things I look forward to on Friday night? I want to relax and I want to go out to eat with my husband. And so I do that. And I don't probably eat perfectly, or I'll have a dessert or something. But if you're doing most things well, most of the time, you can do that. Okay. But we as a society, we all must take charge right now. We all need to help each other be the best version of ourselves. And we know that the medical system, if you talk about cancer, nothing in cancer has gotten better. Nothing. None of the treatments are better. The diagnosis is worse. The situations are worse, and the outcomes are worse. And so we know that the existing paradigm isn't working, that we have got to, all of us together, change the paradigm of medicine today. We must do it.
It's a movement.
So you've got to tell your friends, your family. And if your family doesn't listen, I know people always say, well, my one child does this and they don't listen. I have 3 that do great. But you know what? If you change one person, you have made society and our community better. So please work with us, share this valuable information that we all, Dr. Roney and I know all the rest of our staff, we're passionate about. We, screaming to the world that we can have a better place. As far as I'm concerned, the humans born today, and if they're 16 today, they should be geniuses and Navy SEALs. Do you agree? Of course you agree with me. Look what we had Britannica. I had Britannica. Probably Dr. Roney did too. I'm older than him, but we had that. But now the education and what people have at their disposal now is unbelievable. And we can change everything right now. So I encourage you to partner with us so that we can change the future of healthcare.
Amen. Amen, sister. Thank you, everybody. Have a great couple weeks. We'll see you in 2 weeks. If you have any questions, concerns, reach out. We're here to help you in any way we can. All right. So much love to you all. Thanks, Dr. Keneally.
Thank you, guys.
We'll see you in a couple weeks, everybody. Be good.